Redux is very technical. We need to grab it. Context API is another way of managing states across board in an application, but Redux is more used. Like from my experience working, I found out that most big companies, all of them are using Redux because anything that context cannot do easily or cannot even do at all, then Redux does it very well. And with Redux, you can easily collaborate with other developers and get your tasks achieved. And that's why we want to go first to that very tool that you need as a software developer to work at the highest level in software development. And that is using Redux to manage the app level state. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. So apart from using Redux to do this, there are other ways you can use in doing this. Like I've said before, you can use Context API, but Redux is preferred. So it always is the preferred way of doing things. Then later with time, we'll teach other ways of doing them. Okay. So before we started, I gave some little instructions that can help us get to the same state. And would say that we simply need to do npx create react app 2. Class, can you confirm that everybody have done that? Just the way my own is now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So once you've done this, the next thing to do is for you to take the instruction that I've also sent, where I said do npm install. Then the first thing should be react-redux, as well as at redux.js/toolkit. And I believe that you guys have done that. Now to confirm that you've done it, simply, if you've opened your folder exactly the way mine is, and you can see, click on the package.json. So once you click on the package.json, you're going to see this first dependency, redux.js/toolkit 1.8.3. That's the version. And you're also going to see React Redux 8.0.2. So once you're able to see this, then you are ready to start this class with us. If you're not able to see this too, that means you have a problem, and I'm ready to help you out, sort it out before we start. So are we all on the same page?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So once you are done, you can do your normal npm start to get your program to be running. So please quickly do npm start. So before you run npm start, make sure you're in the right directory. Okay. So let's get started. Okay. So whenever you're using Redux to develop, there's a way that you're supposed to do your development. And that way is the way that we're going to be using for this. So in your folder, everybody, if you can follow me, just tap your folder, your SRC. You're supposed to have 2 main folders if you're going to be using Redux Toolkit to implement your project. And that's why we created a new project today, so that subsequently when you're doing your project and you want to use Redux Toolkit and not either the conventional Redux or Context API, this is the way you set up. So it is the best practice that is advised by the creators of Redux. Okay. So in your SRC folder, can you go to folder under your SRC? Let's get to folder and let's have the app folder. So once you have the app folder, click again on the SRC and have another folder and call that folder features. Okay, if you're able to do this, so please, I'm not looking at your, I'm looking at my screen. So once you have any question, you can always unmute yourself and ask the question, because if you raise your hand, I might not even see it, or if you drop the chat, because I'm just looking at my editor and I'll be coding along on the editor. So if you have any issues, you can always can always unmute yourself and ask me a question. So very, very importantly, make sure that your app and your features are just under the SRC here. Very important, very important. So if you've done this, I will explain the significance of these two folders. So this first folder, known as the app folder, is where you're going to keep your store. So your store is going to contain all your states, so that any component that you create or any feature that you create will inherit the state from that very store. So that's why we call Redux a central store. So you have one store where every other feature or every other component is inheriting from. So you can simply call the very state that you want, and it will be rendered in the component that you're working in. So you remember that we've been building a project, and in the project that we built, all the components, all of them are having what we call component-based states. All their states are also created inside the component. But today we're going to be creating our states in a general store that can now transmit to every other component, so that each component can see what the other person is talking about. So class, were we able to create these two folders?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So once we have these two folders, the next thing we will do will be to create our store. So we'll simply get to, so I've not talked about features. This features folder is the folder that will contain any feature that you want. So let's say you want to create a post application for blog. That blog will be inside the feature. You create a folder for it inside the feature. You want to create a profile, it has to be inside the feature. So any component you want to create that will perform a given feature, all of them have to be under the features. Whereas the app is where we have the store. Okay. So now, once you click on top of the app, click on file. Then inside this file, that is where you create your store. So I'm going to call it store.js. Store.js. So we're going to move very slow so that we'll make sure everybody is following, please. So I'm going to press the enter key.
All in small letters.
Please, all in small letters. Thank you, all in small letters. Like I say, if you want to ask question, unmute yourself, ask me a question, then mute yourself back so that another person can also ask as we are moving. Okay. So once we are in the store, let's create our store that will house every of our data or our states and functions. Okay. So in order for us to do this, there is a tool or a model that we can get from the Redux toolkit, and that very function is known as configure store. That is what we're going to be using. So we simply say import, and this is a named import, and we're going to say configure store. Make sure you write it exactly the way I'm writing it. If you write it any other way, then it will not work. So I'm going to be importing configure store from the model that we did npm install for, which is at redux.js/2k. So we didn't install Redux. We installed at redux.2k because we are using Redux toolkit. If we are using normal Redux, the one that has boilerplate that is very confusing, would have said from Redux. So that is the difference. And with that, we would have been saying create store, but that is not what we are doing. We are using Redux toolkit, which is the recommended way of doing it now. Okay. So please import configure store from Redux toolkit. So once imported this configure store, now it is the time for you to create your store. So I will simply say export const store. So I'm going to use the configure store in order to create this my store. So I'm going to say configure store. Then inside it, I'm going to feed it in with an object of the reducers that we're going to be building. So we're going to find out that when we do this, it will look difficult, but once we finish setting it up, adding more features becomes very, very easy. So inside here is where we're going to be having our reducers when we start creating them. So that is what you need to do. And once you do that, you're good to go. So that is what it takes to create a store. So we've created a store. So every store will take in reducer, and these reducers are going to be the reducers that are linked to the features that we are creating. So if we are going to be creating an application that has to do with post, we are going to be having a post reducer here. If you are creating an application that has to do with account, we are going to be creating account reducer here. If you are going to be creating an application that has to do with users, we're going to be having users reducer here. So we're going to add the reducer later. So please make sure you create your store. That is the first step, creating the store. If you have any questions, you can ask so that we'll move into the next line of action. So when you're doing your project, this is what I'll expect you to do. You have a piece of paper. So once you're starting the project, you people are going to ask yourself, what's the first thing to do? Once you set up do your npx create react app, the next thing will be to create the folders that you need and create your store. So you do your store first, then you start creating the slices, which are the reducers, so that when you create the slice, you can just simply come inside here under these reducers and start referencing them. Okay.
So I have a question.
Oh, please do.
What is a reducer exactly?
Okay. A reducer is actually a function that will help you to change the state. So we're going to have another discussion on all these facts. Immediately after we lay this out, I want us to have a visual representation of what we are doing. Then we'll explain what we mean as a reducer, what we mean as an action, what we mean as a store. So store is simply the container that houses the states. The reducer is the function which you can change the state. So action, you disperse an action in order to work, in order to get the reducer to change the state. So we're going to have all this explained. Is that clear? The person that
Yes,
asked. Okay. So let's keep moving. So I don't want to speak too much grammars on reducers and action when you've not seen them implemented. So once I implement them now, we're going to be looking at it, looking at the visuals of what we've done. Then we'll explain them again. Like I said, today's class is quite abstract and technical. So I want to take time in explaining every detail. So once you start using it every day, you're going to understand more on how it works. Okay. So class, do we move forward or do we give time for you to type this out?
Please, give us 10 minutes to type it out.
Oh, okay, 10 minutes to type it out. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to type it out. Sorry, somebody's calling me. Okay, so class, I'm gonna give us 10 minutes to quickly type this out. Then, very importantly, why I left my terminal to be running is that if you also leave your own running, as you're typing, once there's an error, you can easily see it on the terminal. So it's always good you let your terminal to be running. And I hope we also all know that we can set up another terminal in case if we want to do an installation and we still leave this one running. We can come here and click on this plus sign to open up another terminal. So it's always good that our terminal is running while we are coding so that we make sure that we are not having bugs. So, can we continue? Or do we need more time? Okay. Okay, so let's continue now. So now we have our store created. So having our store, very, very importantly, we need to get this store to the app so that the app can be seeing this store. The app has to know that this store is existing. And for us to wrap our app with this store, we need to get to our index.js. So everybody please click on your index.js. So like I said, the procedure I'm teaching us now is what we call the standard procedure for implementing this. So when you check out plenty tutorials online, you can see different people implementing this same thing in different ways. But please, we are going to do it in the standard way. Then later we can do other variations of it. Okay, so once you are in your index.js, so I want you to quickly come here, click down, and import the store. I'm going to simply say import, and we know that the store is a named export, so I'm going to import the store, and I'm getting the store from it's not actually in /store, so I already know where I can get it. I know I can get it in / the folder where I have the store is in app, and then dash store. So that is where I have my store. So first of all, I'm gonna import the store. Then in order for me to get the store to the app, I need what we call a provider. So I'm gonna simply say import. Okay, you can see IntelliSense is already helping me to get this. I'm gonna import provider. And where am I getting the provider? I'm actually getting this very provider from the React Redux that we installed. You remember there are two things that you installed. So you installed at Redux toolkit, at Redux.js/toolkit and React Redux. So the provider actually comes from React Redux. Okay. So those are the only two imports that you need from here. Okay. So once you've done importing them, now you need to wrap your app. So you know that our root app is this app. So we need to wrap it up. So make sure you wrap it up on top of the app. If you wrap it on top of the React strict mode or any other thing, you might not have what you want to have. Okay, so I'm going to simply use provider to provide the store to the app. I'm going to say provider. I'm passing the prop of store, and I'm giving it this very store. Okay, so make sure you're wrapping it. So down here, you're also gonna have your what? Closing tag for the provider. So save, and your format on save will help you format it very well. I'm gonna give us a little time to get this typed out as well. Please type it out. So you can see our steps in using Redux Toolkit. The first thing you do is to create your store, and you always create your store inside your what? App folder. And once you're done creating your store, you have to come to your index.js and wrap your app with the store using the provider. Okay. If you have any questions, you can ask before we continue. So is anybody still typing, or we can continue? Okay, if anybody is not still typing, so please, can you see that there is an error in my features? So I'm going to quickly make sure that I rename this. So make sure you write the spelling very well so that it doesn't bug. So it should be FEATURES. That is features, okay? So we are now going to work in the features folder. So now that we've created our store and we've wrapped our app with our store, let's go start getting the features, okay? So eventually we're going to be creating a blog feature, but before we do that, we need to start with a very simple app that we can understand how things work there before we start getting it complicated, okay? So let's get to the feature, and once you make sure that you're on this feature, the way it's highlighted, click on folders. Click on folders. So this is where we would have created a blog folder for blog feature if we wanted. Profile, it would have been here. If we wanted account information, it would have been here. Okay, but we're starting with a very simple application so that we understand what is happening, and we're going to call it the counter feature. So we're going to be building a simple counter. So that is going to be our feature counter. So make sure you click on the features folder, then click on folder. If you had clicked on file, you will not be having a folder. So this has to be a folder. So the folder should have the name counter. So if you're having another folder blog, then it's going to be a folder blog. We are going to be creating a post feature. It's going to be a post feature. Okay. So depending on the functionalities you want to have in your website, this is where you create all of them in the features. That is the standard way advised by by the creators of Redux toolkit. So please, if you have made a mistake in putting this inside counter, make sure you can delete the folder at once, recreate it again. Make sure that your counter is inside features. Okay. So the way we do this, that we create a folder so that everything concerning the counter will be stored inside this folder. So both the counter component, the counter slice, which is going to be the reducer, everything is going to be inside this folder. So if you now have another feature, say blog, it will also have its counter, its block component, and the block slice. So all of them are going to eventually be called inside this very store. So you see the way it is being passed from this folder in the slides, it gets to this store. So everything is looking from the store and working from the store. Okay. So please, once you've created this counter feature, so this counter feature inside it, so click on top of this counter feature and click on files. So this is where we will have our component, and we know that our component should always start in capital letters, and our component is counter.js. Counter.js, that is our component. That is our component. And we know that once we have, okay, please, you have a question? I'm listening. Sorry, I can't hear you very well. The person that just spoke.
You said yours was capital letter, the counter.js. So
Yes.
you should have a small letter.
No, it has to be capital letter for the component. Please make sure it's capital letter. The counter.js has to be capital letter, but the folder name counter is in small letters. The folder name counter is in small. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. So inside this very counter is where we'll run our script A arrow A F C E tab in order to bring our counter component. So once you do it, we simply save and leave it there for now. So that is our counter component. Okay, so once you have your counter component, then this counter component is going to be having a state. And we already know that the name of the state should be count. For this count, we need to be able to make other components to see it, because we want this state to be the app level state. So we need to do this. We need to create this state inside the reducer. And in this case of toolkit, we'll call the reducer the slice, because the reducer now, unlike in the former Redux where you have the reducer, then you have the action. So two of them are different. In Redux toolkit, we have what we call a slice that has both the reducer and the actions. Okay, so we're going to create a slice that will manage the state of this counter component. Okay, so we simply get back to, make sure you click here, or that you're on this folder. You can be on any of them. If you click on the counter.js, then it will create a new file on the same level as the counter.js, which is what you want. So I'm going to click on this. Then I'm going to type in the counter slice.js. So that is going to be the counter slice, which is going to be the reducer that will help us change the state and manage the state. So this very counter slice is going to be referenced in our store, so that state will not be come in our general store, and every component in this app can easily see that very state, and which is going to lead us to building very beautiful things in future. If you have any questions, you can ask before we'll continue.
Just that other slide is under the count.
Sorry, I don't know whether it's from my own volume. I can't hear you, especially when you. Okay, I think my volume was down. Say it again. Sorry, please.
I say, sir, sorry, the counter, is it under counter or under the features?
The counter slice is on the same level with the counter.js. That means it is inside the counter folder, and that counter folder is inside the features folder.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. So these are the things that will make your app not to run when we start testing it. So that's why I'm taking my time to point it out. So make sure you create where it is supposed to be. Very, very important. I don't know whether we are through with this one. This one will just simply run the script. So we are through with it. Then we can get our counter slide that we just created. Okay, now we are in our counter slides, and we say that in Redux toolkit, in the former Redux, we used to have our reducer separate from our actions, but the boilerplate was so large that people were being discouraged. People were actually discouraged from using Redux, and some would prefer to use Remix, Context API, and other state management system. So that's why the creators of Redux looked to solving the problem of huge boilerplate in just trying to just initially set up Redux. So they now did Redux toolkit, which from my own point of view is also still confusing at some level, but that's what we have to just make do with for now. But with time, I believe that they will find a way of still simplifying it.